In watching The Last Dance, I realized, there are certain basketball teams that over the years I liked and certain basketball teams I didn't. So I can't have a 1 through 32 in basketball, 1 through 30 in basketball. I can't even do 1 through 20, to be honest. Once you get to 16, you're into some dicey territory. And because I don't I haven't watched enough basketball that I could say, man, I really cheer for that team. And man, I really don't cheer for that team. One thing I've found out is if a team plays in Texas, they're in my top 16. I'm not sure what that's all about. I'm kind of surprised. When I was looking at the top 16, I'm like, yep. And, well, okay, if they're in Texas, I probably like them. So at 16, the Charlotte Hornets come in at 16. And again, I went back and forth on who to put in 16th. Let me just turn that a little bit. Yeah, let's turn that. And move that over a little bit. No, still don't like it. See that one light? I'll turn it. But, yeah, 16th I have the Charlotte Hornets. Again, a team that, I could find myself rooting for at times. And I know we're going to have basketball games at the end of this month. And we'll see where everybody is. And this is likely going to tell you, for teams that are playing, which ones I'd likely be cheering for, and the teams that aren't playing, well, better luck next year. Number 15, the Bulls. I did like the Bulls when Jordan was there. I did. I respected them. I thought they were, and I liked them way more than the Pistons. Pistons are not in the top 16. I couldn't stand Isaiah Thomas, and it's funny because in watching The Last Dance, it reminded me why I didn't like Isaiah. Reminded me why, when I was watching basketball regularly, and I was at that time, I would watch basketball and hockey, not the same, but I would say I was 35% more likely to want to watch the basketball game than the hockey game based on which teams were playing. So back in the early 90s, late 80s, it wasn't as clear cut as it may be now, where it's just, I got to watch hockey. And Isaiah, I wanted to see him lose so badly and so often. And Detroit, as great as they were, I really, really, really was not cheering for them towards the end there. Yeah. So number 14, a team that had Karl Malone on it, that Chicago did beat, and I may have cheered for Utah that year. And hearing the stories now from the Chicago perspective, I don't know if I'm still thinking that was a bad thing. I honestly, watching The Last Dance does kind of make you cheer for the Bulls just a little bit more, but traditionally, yeah, no, I would cheer for Utah over Chicago. And despite that special making me, well, that mini-series making me think of things a little bit differently, it doesn't necessarily mean I got to flip those teams. Number 13, because I love the name, I love the jerseys, the overall look, and it's Minnesota Timberwolves. One thing Minnesota's got going for it is that with the Minnesota Wild and the Minnesota Timberwolves, there is something very, very similar there. Minnesota Twins kind of stand out. But the T-Wolves, still waiting on a championship for them. Could be a while. But, yeah, so the T-Wolves I would have at 13. Here's to hoping, right? Number 12, Houston Rockets. I've talked a lot about how, as a sports fan, I will often cheer for the underdog. The Rockets were not really an underdog, but I really did cheer for the Rockets. I really enjoyed seeing them win a championship or two, and I still like that team a lot. So when I'm watching, up here we're going to get a lot of Raptors games. If I'm watching them against the Rockets, because there isn't hockey on at the moment, yeah, I don't mind if the Rockets beat them. I do like the Houston Rockets. So number 12, number 11, team that I liked as well for Shaq. So when it gets to my favorite players of all time, Shaquille O'Neal would probably be number 1. Being honest, and Michael Jordan's probably number 2. And again, Tim Duncan might get in at number 3, but maybe I'll do my favorite basketball players video at some point. But the Orlando Magic, very fantastic name for a team. Again, I love the team's look, their color, and all that. And I was a huge fan of Shaq. So what wasn't there to love about the Orlando Magic at the time? And you want to talk about draft lotteries that people were all up in arms about. Boy, the Shaq one, I tell you. Number 10, because I'm waiting for them to get good, and that's the Sacramento Kings. And I mean, getting into some sort of contender spot and really being quite good at it, I do tend to root for underdogs. So, of the California teams, the Lakers aren't on here, and I'm just thinking the Lakers aren't in my top 16. They're not going to be. That's how it is. I've never been a Lakers fan. I had to make a decision in the 80s, and the Lakers was not my choice. Number 9, Suns. So again, when I'm watching the Last Dance, and I'm watching and looking at all these finals, and the weird thing is, in almost every case, the team that they were beating in the finals was one that I actually wanted to win. So I'm like, it's great that the Bulls won all these championships, but almost every single time they were in the finals, I actually didn't want them to win that series, and then they did. So the Suns were a team that I really wanted to see win a championship. I really thought Charles Barkley would get them there. I had really hoped. Number 8, proving that I'm not too bitter about things, the Memphis Grizzlies. I get why they left Vancouver. I get that. I found it more baffling that they kept the name Grizzlies, but at least they did change the logo. And because I don't think there's any Grizzly Bears in Memphis. Not that there's any in downtown Vancouver either, let's be honest. But Memphis, I would love to see them win something as well. And who knows if the Grizzlies organization's ever going to win anything. We'll see, right? Number 7. Another one. Same thing. Clyde the Glide. Clyde Drexler. Loved Clyde Drexler. So again, when I'm watching this Last Dance and Michael Jordan's talking about, they said Clyde was on my level, and I took that personally, so I want to beat the crap out of him. And he did. And I mean in game. And it was ugly. And I remember I was all excited before that final, and then coming out of game 1, I was like, oh, this is going to get ugly because Jordan's all fired up. Here we go again. But the Trailblazers, I really wanted to see them win. I've been to Portland. I've been inside the building that they used at the time for the Portland Trailblazers, which was actually pretty cool. And I just, I don't know. I guess we'll see. And I say that because I don't know if they've replaced it since then. That was what was that, 88, 89? So I have no idea. Literally, legit, no idea. But yeah, Trailblazers, I really wanted to see them win something. And then there's a team that I did see win something in 6th, and that's the Dallas Mavericks. Very, very well-run organization. Some players on the Mavs that I liked very much. Again, I could do probably my favorite basketball players at some point. But the Mavs, for me, are solidly in the top row. And once you get 8 and above, I'll even go as far as to say 9 and above, you're into teams that I legit cheer for when I'm watching basketball games, again, in years where I've really been into it. Since my hockey channel went crazy, my basketball watching had to drop, because when you're making your living off watching hockey, you can't say, well, I'm not watching hockey tonight because I'm going to watch that sport that I don't make an income off of watching, so, right? Number 5, not a surprise to see Boston in the list. Shouldn't be a surprise to see Boston in the list. It might be a surprise to people that Boston's this far down. But yeah, I have them at 5. There was a time when they were number 1. Back in the 80s, they would have been number 1. And that's what I mean by I had to choose between the Celtics and the Lakers. And I still kind of feel that way, that like Celtics and Lakers is how I came into basketball, where it was Magic against Larry Bird. And I was like, you know what? I'm cheering for Larry Bird. Even though the Celtics at the time, probably not the cleanest team in basketball, right? Much like the Pistons would be later. They had some rather ornery customers. But I really liked Robert Parrish, Larry Bird, Kevin McHale. It was a pretty interesting group that they had with the Celtics. And anytime they met the Lakers, I was cheering for the Celtics. So they're at number 5. Number 4, the Golden State Warriors. And I remember... what did they have? They had an 0-22 record. They had some ridiculous losing record at the start of one season. And I started feeling bad, and I was like, man, I really hope the Warriors turn it around. And, of course, they haven't had that problem recently. Steph is fantastic. Great player. One of the best of this generation and all of that. Of course, LeBron is the guy, and since he's with the Lakers, not on the list. I almost had the Cavaliers in the top 16, but I don't have them in the top 16. But I have the Golden State Warriors at number 4. And yeah, the Warriors, pretty good team. Although, the logo I'm using there is not the one they've been using. And I do have some older logos, and then I have the current ones as well. And then in some cases, I may have the wrong one on the board because that's going to happen. There it is. There we go. So I'll take that one down and put that one up. There you go. I apologize for any that I may have had an old one up instead of the new one, or might be a little bit out of date, but I tried my best to make sure it's all the new ones. Number 3, I had to kind of mix and match because I ordered from Amazon, and what they sent me, I was like, this isn't right, so I had to find something, and yeah. So it kind of became kind of a jumbled mess. Number 3, Toronto Raptors. That's right. I cheer for Toronto in basketball. I can do that. Now, there was a time when I wouldn't have because I had to choose between Vancouver and Toronto. I'm like, well, I'm going to cheer for the Grizzlies, but Grizzlies have been Memphis for a while, so it'd be kind of petty if I continued to dislike the Raptors. Not only that, part of the reason why the Raptors are where they are right now, I definitely cheered for them over Golden State last year. And this season, with Kawhi leaving, I mean, it's major that they lose Kawhi, but they're not a bad team. And yet everybody just takes them for granted. Everybody goes, the Raptors are done. Why? It's basketball. I mean, you lose Kawhi, that's major. And if you don't have Kawhi last year, they probably don't win the championship. But why can't they? And so I'm a believer that they could win another championship. And it would be great if I'm doing a video on this channel talking about them winning another championship this year. I think that'd be fantastic. Number 2, the LA Clippers. Because I can't have 2 LA teams. And the Clippers were absolute garbage. Garbage in the 80s. And I'm like, you know what? Nobody's cheering for the Clippers. I hope the Clippers do really well. I'd like to see things. And the Clippers were the butt of every single joke. Think of it like the way that the New York Knicks are now. But picture it that you have another team named New York that's really, really good in winning championships. And then you have the Knicks. And in this case, it was the Los Angeles Lakers winning everything. And then you had the Clippers. I'm aware of the Brooklyn Nets being in the same vicinity as the New York Knicks, but it's not really. To me, it's not the same thing. And I understand to others it may be, but to me, it's not the same thing. Definitely wouldn't have been the same thing back then. It was the New Jersey Nets. So, yeah. Number 2 is the Clippers, and then number 1 shouldn't surprise anybody. It's the San Antonio Spurs. So, again, the San Antonio Spurs, who have been my favorite since the days of Robinson and Duncan. What I liked with them, and it intersected with some of the other dynasties that were going on, it just, I don't know what it is. It felt like they were just a really hardworking, great defensive team in a league. I mean, basketball isn't exactly something where you think about defense necessarily first, unless you're Dennis Rodman. But you know, the Spurs were just fantastic. And I was very happy when they won championships. Made me very, very happy. So one thing that's different with basketball from other sports is that there are numerous teams out of this top 16 that have won their share of championships. And when you look at my favorite hockey teams, very often they're teams that either haven't won it in a long time or... And again, I view myself as somewhat of a jinx when it comes to hockey. I don't view myself that way when it comes to basketball. Maybe it's a level of affection for the sport where I'm like, you know, I enjoy basketball. And these 16 teams in about this order. And yeah. How about a West Coast bias? Is there a West Coast bias? 1, 2, 3 of the top 4 are Western Conference. You can't say San Antonio's West Coast, but still, Western Conference. 3, 4, 5, 6, because Memphis is still in the West. 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 out of 16 are Western Conference. So there's a little bit of a West Coast or Western Conference bias. Can't say West Coast. A lot of these teams aren't on the coast. They're just in the Western Conference. And of course, like I said, 3 of them are from Texas. So that's the interesting thing is that Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio. So I don't know if that breaks any rules for people from Texas. I don't know if that breaks any rules among fans of the sport. And I always, see people getting mad if I cheer for more than one team. But it's not like San Antonio and the Clippers have had like epic playoff showdowns or San Antonio and Toronto. So it's not really a big deal. And again, when Toronto played Golden State in the finals last year, I went, no, I want Toronto to win this. I thought that would have been a great story, and it turned out it was. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.